All right, so yeah, we basically started. So, like I said, my first year we had. It sounds like similar to what you had in your curriculum. We had maybe a few hours that was allotted to our curriculum in for ultrasound, and I think Dr. Fox had 2 machines or 3 machines that he brought into a huge our building over there with 100 students, and so we didn't have a lot of hands-on. And then essentially we really changed the curriculum my second year, and it was heavily integrated in our curriculum, where I'm sure you guys have heard we had, it developed into being, very hands-on program. What I was so impressed by was just how enthused everyone was about this. There's so much enthusiasm from the students, and what I felt like I tried to work with Dr. Fox in doing was just bottling that energy and channeling it into different ways that could be, the most productive and and allow everyone to thrive in ultrasound as much as possible. And so through that process, we really started UltraFest. That was one of the things that I think probably a lot of you guys have heard of. And again, it just really echoed the enthusiasm throughout the state and throughout the country. We were shocked. We got 300 people with the first UltraFest here at UCI. And everyone was just so excited about it. And I think part of what ultrasound allows for medical students, that it seemed like the difference is it really allowed a connection of the medical student to the patient much more than I think that they would otherwise have. And so they really have a unique insight, and they can really contribute to the team and connect with that patient and really provide valuable information back to their team as even a first-year medical student not knowing much. And then that's, I think that allows them to gain a lot of insight into the disease process and into patient care that they wouldn't otherwise have. And so maybe that's part of what's so exciting about it. But I think Dr. Fox couldn't stop. It just everything came at him. Everyone wanted to do another new research project. Everyone wanted to go abroad, and so with funneling that energy, we started the ultrasound interest group, USIG at UCI, and really tried to just organize again all of that energy and channel it. And we had. Basically, did a lot of community service, where some people did this cardiomyopathy study, and they screened a whole bunch of high school kids, first year, second year, third year medical students, screened a whole bunch of high school kids basically for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and so that's really contributed to the community. We started an elective at UCI to really help train students who even wanted more ultrasound than what our curriculum was even providing, and so a whole bunch of students joined that, not necessarily even getting any additional credit. We had our portable ultrasound machine that we took with us to it was like the little nano that we could take with us to our rotations. And then Chanel got this amazing grant that allowed our students to really go abroad and use ultrasound all over the world, really, and I'm sure she'll be talking about that. So it was just very exciting to see the enthusiasm and the energy of medical students, really embracing ultrasound and integrating it into their education so passionately. And it was just been really a joy to be part of that process, I guess. So I'm happy to talk about any questions too, but I'll let these guys kind of share some of their experiences as well.
I mean, you covered basically everything. We tried to capture it in the presentation too, but Kaya talked about the outreach we've done, and UltraFest obviously has been a huge part of the outreach. I actually was hoping to read an email I just got. So from all of these meetings, actually, like AIUM and World Congress, we've made so many friends all over the world, and actually we did the first International UltraFest in Slovenia, and so I spent time and we've all spent time online, Google chatting, Skyping, and they did their first one in January this past year. We weren't able to make that flight out there, but they just did a recent one because the demand was so high, and so Jan is one of the physicians out there who basically we communicate all the time, and he said, "Hi Chanel, it's been a while since we last spoke. In the meantime, we've pulled off UltraFest 2.0 in 2 locations in Slovenia. This time around 150 undergraduate medical students from the whole country attended, with half a dozen students from abroad as well. 24 instructors in both cities were delighted to provide their services free of charge. One of the quotes from the students said that I'm amazed by the level of engagement of the students and by the quick learning abilities in terms of the technical aspects and applying the core knowledge at the bedside. And he basically closed by saying, I would once again like to thank you for your support in helping us spread the UltraFest message and brand in Europe. It's a great privilege and honor to be at the cutting edge of incorporating ultrasound in education and undergraduate programs here as well. So it's just amazing that literally us as students are able to do that, and now we're in another country, and we didn't even do this outside of the internet and Google Chat, so it's just been so exciting to have that. And then also we've published a lot of research at different conferences, and Kaya talked about the HOCM study that we've been doing and doing a lot of outreach with that. And then of course, I think UCI has kind of branded the whole idea of international ultrasound, and we've taken it to places like Panama, Transylvania, Australia, and Tanzania. And actually, I think Jen will probably talk about this next, but where we have been going next and where we're hoping to continue going is really strengthening our national approach. And so we just started the first national USIG, which is the Ultrasound Student Interest Group. And so you can see it at this website here, or if you just Google National USIG. We just elected our first board, and it's being sponsored through AIUM. And so that's kind of where we see the next frontier of where we need to go. So that's kind of the UCI, where we've been and where we're hoping to go still approach.
If you guys want to keep talking, I'll load mine now that we have Flash. So exciting.
Do you guys have any questions so far about where we've been? And
Is it been pointed out that Kaya is night sandwich? Kaya worked last night until 7 a.m. this morning, and then she's going back tonight until 7 a.m.
To sign up. I need to
So
sign
came in the
up.
middle of the day, she woke up.
How do I
went to sleep,
sign
become
up? There we go.
completed, So thank you, Kaya.
Yeah,
Okay,
pleasure to be here.
perfect. All right. You guys can keep talking for a little bit while I log myself
Gracie,
in.
did we miss anything?
Do you have any questions of barriers you have seen in trying to get the students involved in scheduling? Because we're on the other side of things of faculty just develop curriculum, and then we're either really saturated or overwhelmed or not. I think I saw her hand in there.
I was curious about how you guys might be incorporating ultrasound as an interprofessional activity with the other professions.
Oh, that's a great question. So this came up in the last session actually, because I have my sonographers up there, and it's a real nice opportunity to work with all of our colleagues throughout, not just other professions in medicine, not just nurses and sonographers, but also other specialties in medicine as well. That's a really good point. I mean, how much do you guys work with the sonographers in your teaching, and both clinically at work now?
Yeah.
Can you talk to a sonographer on the phone, like Scott or somebody?
Oh,
and
yeah,
down
yeah,
and
he's
radiology?
so great, yeah. So,
It's not
specifically, are you
quite
just
there.
talking about
It's not there.
sonographers, or are you talking about in other fields?
My
of
presentation is
medicine?
not saved there for some
Yeah,
reason.
so I mean, it's exciting. I mean, at UCI, Dr. Russ has done so much that it's just really, he's really so well renowned throughout every field. The other day, he had the most amazing ultrasound. This 16-year-old who came in basically, and a real good friend of one of our top directors of the trauma team, basically, and so he found a fascinating finding on her that she had been there for 8 hours, and she had a little shortness of breath, but really non-specific symptoms. Somebody really wanted to scan her, and so we were about to send her home, and Dr. Fox just put a probe on her and found kind of really extensive findings of a clot throughout the IVCs. And so that really prompted, obviously a very intense workup, definitely changed management, and trauma surgeon came down, and he was so clearly, pleased and impressed, and he already thinks so highly of ultrasound and everything. And I heard him come down the other day, and he was like, well, why hasn't this patient been echoed yet, bedside echo, and why aren't we checking the IVC status? And so, I mean, it's definitely so well integrated throughout there. Our ICU docs, certainly, so he's probably more integrated up over there at Loma Linda, but our ICU docs are also very involved. When I rotated through ICU, thankfully I'm finished with all that now, but when I rotated through ICU, it was mandatory for us to do rounds. As we did rounds, we had to ultrasound every single patient, and that was just part of our presentation. And I was the only one who knew how to do it. You know, I mean, none of the other internal medicine residents from other schools really knew how to do any of this. And so it was really fun to actually, you know, I would be the one to take all the patients, and I would just do rounds and ultrasound rounds on everyone. And that was very exciting, obviously. And then internal medicine as well. I think they do, Dr. Fox says, internal medicine rounds with a lot of the floor as well. And so different, I think it's once a week you do, or once every couple weeks. And so that tries to integrate, you know, there as well. So I mean, I think it's definitely, people take very well to it. And we're still working on getting our images uploaded into a system that everyone can view. And that's, you know, clinically, that's our biggest boundary between actually having to order that formal ultrasound, because, you know, we really, not everybody can easily view it and up on every screen throughout the hospital. And so that's our boundary, that's our big barrier right now. And so we still have to order that formal. You know, if I find cholecystitis, I still have to order that formal so the surgeons upstairs can see it. So that's where we are right now. But yeah, it's certainly, it's taken very well throughout the hospital.
All right. If you'll bear with me, my finished slides, for whatever reason, aren't on the internet. They're only on my flash drive. So we'll do an interesting version of this. But basically, so you already know that I'm a new MD, but how I got interested in ultrasound when we didn't even have a curriculum is people like you. We wanted to have a ultrasound workshop to learn the fast scan for our emergency medicine interest group, just because we thought it would get us in closer to the traumas. We didn't even know ultrasound was a thing. None of us knew that. And so we have this ultrasound guy. I had no idea who he was. I went and asked him if he would just come teach our workshop, and he said, great, come to my rush workshop tomorrow. You'll learn what you need to set up your own workshop, and I'll show up. And so I went to a rush workshop, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I was a second-year med student at the beginning of my second year, and it was nuts. I couldn't believe we weren't being taught that. So I went up to, turns out this is Matt Dawson, and so I went up to him with my iPad, and I said, hey, you don't really know me that well, but if you sign this iPad, you're going to have me for a whole year, and I'm going to be your elective student. And he said, we don't have an elective. And I said, you will if you sign right here. And that was it. That was the beginning of it. And so I spent the whole year just studying with him. But my classmates got a little bit jealous. So we ended up starting a USIG. And let's see if I'm clever enough to get out of this. Oh, almost. Okay. And so this is what I do with ultrasound now. 3 years later, after an elective and through independent study and a USIG to build an ultrasound community. So for us, we've used the ultrasound interest group and the students to help push and drive the curriculum change. And it's so hard to ignore a really excited, enthusiastic group of students. It's one of the largest groups on campus. We collect data at all of our workshops, so we plopped a big pile of data on our dean's desk. It's kind of hard to ignore that. And yeah, that's pretty much been our experiences. The students have been pushing the ultrasound from the bottom up, and we've had really supportive faculty, ultrasound faculty, helping us. Once we've broken down our course directors, we say, we know a guy, and he can help you out. And so that's where you all come in, is championing our cause and providing the legitimacy in the curriculum once the course directors are ready for that. Go ahead.
And to kind of tag along to that, I know we flew out to Thomas Jefferson University to put on the first East Coast Ultrafest, and actually a lot of the schools in the Philly area were kind of opposed to integrating it. And after Ultrafest, which basically was spawned by this meeting last year in New York, Matt Fields was there, and he was like, hey, can we do this at Jeff? And after that, Temple actually is talking about maybe integrating it into their curriculum, and the dean a week later was like, I'm so sorry I wrote off ultrasound as a curriculum. Let's try to work towards getting it integrated. So, I mean, it really does speak to the power of how
Oh my gosh,
the bottom-up approach can work.
It worked really great for us. So my first year, I seriously had no idea ultrasound existed. Year one was year one of our ultrasound group. We didn't even have a USIG. We just used some workshops to get the student interest there. And that turned out great, and I created the independent study elective. By year two, oh, that's a little too enthusiastic. By year two, our USIG was started. And we had enough students aggressively pushing ultrasound in our physical exam curriculum that we got ultrasound introduced into the curriculum, and that was through faculty efforts and the student efforts combined. So if you're ignoring your students as a resource, you're wasting this huge, awesome, talented pool of really aggressive A-type people that feel like they're missing out on something, and you're just missing out on this great resource. So really don't neglect them. And then last year, that's this year. So I didn't even do this. Some of our first years turned second years wanted ultrasound in the musculoskeletal anatomy curriculum. And so they did this completely on their own because they'd spent a year in our USIG and they thought it was nuts that we weren't being taught that. And I'm so proud of them. They're amazing. They're taking over the group and the things that they have planned. They're going to outshine all of us that started the group initially. And our little ragtag 1 year of USIG group ended up winning the Ultrasound World Cup last year. So we were pretty proud of ourselves. It worked out pretty well. So it's not a horrible education model to kind of bridge the gap between the curriculum change and where people are now. Yeah.
If I could just add to what they're saying, Irvine to me is a place where it's student driven. The curriculum's there from the faculty. You go to basic science classes, you have your clinical rotations. Most of the things that are extracurricular are student driven. The students wanted to start a free clinic. The students wanted to start an needle exchange program. The students wanted to, whatever the students want, the faculty are very encouraging and nurturing, and they help connect them if they need additional resources, training, or if there needs to be a change in the curriculum. The faculty, like Dr. Fox and like you guys met Dean Clayman, they help create that space within the curriculum. And it may start as a unofficial workshop, as an interest group, as an elective, and eventually develop into something that's ingrained in the curriculum. Is now there's funding, and so I would just say definitely keep in mind the students. And I want to say at least 3 times a week, Dr. Fox said, I have a meeting with blank student who wants to now whatever with ultrasound, right? Whether it's a research study, write up a case, anything. There's always some student-driven project. And most of the things that we've done at UCI was, Kaya was a second year when you wanted to develop the elective, right? It's for students to actually get something on their transcripts, officially getting credit for this. And the deans were kind of like, well, how are they going to be assessed? How are we going to grade this, right? And so Dr. Fox and Dean Clayman were there to be able to facilitate that. Same thing with, let's go abroad. Whoa, what do you mean you want to take these expensive machines to foreign countries with students that don't necessarily have training? And so the students, one of the things that I love about academic medicine is the fact that you're constantly getting new energy, creativity from the students. The cream of the crop of the country is there. And they have this technology, and you just have to, so just watch them make it sing, right? And the faculty is so essential because if your dean isn't coming to you saying, hey, can you develop me a 4-year curriculum, and here's all the money, and here's all the space for it, little by little, these little tiny additions get created. And somebody earlier was saying, I thought I would show up and change the curriculum all in 1 year, change all 4 years. And he's like, yeah, that was kind of ambitious. I'm gonna do 1 section, 1 elective per year and go that way. One of the grants that we applied to be able to develop the curriculum was, we thought we were gonna develop the full curriculum, all like in 1 sitting. And boy, were we wrong. We ended up saying, we're gonna focus basically 1 year at a time, little by little, maybe 2 years at a time, tweaking it here and there. And like Kaya said, when she started, there was nothing. And then our job when she was a second year, now that we had some part of the curriculum, was to both implement it with the first years and get the second years caught up. But there's a constantly changing of just being flexible, finding the way, and then the students are constantly reaching out to the faculty. So you were talking about how do you integrate, or how do you work with other departments or other professions? For us, we thought, well, we're getting some students showing up to the USIG activities, but not everybody is interested in ultrasound. So we started doing these activities by saying, well, it's gonna be a USIG activity, but the OB residents are gonna be there, helping out with the workshop. So now everybody that's interested in ultrasound and OB shows up. And now we're gonna do an emergency medicine one. So now you have 2 groups of people. And and working that way with the different departments, it really just spread like wildfire as well. The other thing that we do is we take these machines to elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, and to the undergrad campus. That is something that I was very passionate about. I'm from an underserved community where we don't necessarily have role models who are doctors who can tell us, hey, you should go to medical school. So we take the machines and we just bring them to the high schoolers, and they scan each other, they scan us, and we get them motivated about pursuing careers in medicine. And not only is it great for them, but it's something that the deans love to brag about, you know. And at the end of the day, you have to make it interesting for the students. You have to make it a good tool that they can use when they're residents. And at the same time, the guy that writes your paycheck has to be able to brag about it, and right, or like, and that's you guys. Like, what are you gonna get out of this besides awesomely trained medical students? Everybody loves it in the community. They see medical students coming to the community saying, we're gonna, you know, encourage other students to go to medical school. We're gonna go encourage, I don't know, the nurses to work closer with the residents and the medical students and the attendings on how to do some procedures. I mean, it really has allowed us to connect with different things that we didn't even think we would ever do. I think at least once a year, one of us gets asked to go to some fancy party and sit there with an ultrasound machine as people were having cocktails. And the first time we heard it, we're like, you want us to do what? Yeah, we set up a table, we had a model, we were all dressed up, everybody was at this gala, there's cocktails going around, and people were like holding a cocktail, scanning some student, right? And it was a funding gala, and they loved it, and people from the community who were potential donors for our university were able to see how this would impact their own healthcare in the future. And so the students really have, I mean, Dr. Fox has been able to connect students with the proper resources for this, but I would definitely say, just put a student in a room with a machine and see what they decide they want to do with it, and just encourage them and nurture them and hold their hand through it. But you had a question, I think?
A quick question about interactions with, obviously, the culture here at UCI is different,
Yeah.
probably from other places, but let's say you're scanning and your attending is not like ultrasound friendly, you find something, then what's the mechanism of like, does it get a first study, maybe the attending doesn't want to get it, you get a call, I mean,
So at Kentucky, we kind of have that experience where not all the faculty are super on board. In terms of the ratios compared to UCI, I think UCI is a little bit more favorable. And we teach a class as all of our USIG second years go up into third year called How to Use Ultrasound in Ultrasound Naive Environments. And because I stepped on so many landmines like that as a third year, and so we work up the food chain. So we start out with the resident and feel that out, and see if they think the attending would be open to this. And sometimes our students do find really important findings, like 6 centimeter AAAs. I mean, the attendings see that, they see the image, they can't argue with it. And so some of that has been really nice because the people who are supposed to be teaching us end up going and doing ultrasound electives, and several of them have done that. Several of the residents ended up requesting that that be taught in their resident curriculum, and so then they pushed their own curriculum change. So while there are terrible, horrible landmines to step on, for the most part, I think that's the exception than the rule.
When I did an away rotation this past year, I had that problem at one of the sites that I was at, and it was actually a very ultrasound friendly institution. But I find that if I'm really just unassuming and kind of like disarming about it, where I'm just excited, like, hey, so I did the physical exam, and then I also threw the ultrasound on, and I was looking at the kidneys, and like, I think it may be hydroureter, like, what do you think? Then they're like, you know, and then I think the way that you go about it, if you don't like force the issue, if you just say like, hey, I'm actually supplementing what I did with the skill set that I've now learned from my undergrad medical institution, that's when I've had the most success. But there have totally been times where I've brought it up in front of my attending and then they just totally disregarded it.
But I think you're super right. It's so hard for someone to crush when you have all this joy and you're like, I just want to learn, and I did this scan for learning purposes. I mean, that's been my experience.
I think also the placement, so instead of assuming that everybody is going to be on board, there's machines almost strategically placed throughout the hospital where a student who is enthusiastic about it might be able to use it if they know that they have somebody nearby who is friendly to it. They can go check it out from the nurse, go use it. And then there's also a system in place, and Dr. Fox will tell you more about this, of what do you do if you do find something and the person there isn't necessarily doesn't feel comfortable making the call based on it? Like, what is the order of response? Like, who do you call if that person can't make the decision? How do you get a hold of Dr. Fox, one of the fellows? What do you do? And I think most students don't show up on their first year rotation going, here's my machine, where we're going, right? Like, they usually test the waters, right? Who am I on with, and are they friendly to ultrasound? And it's on a case-by-case basis, especially in the settings. Like in the ED, it's just assumed, like, why didn't you already do the ultrasound? But in other specialties, it's more of a, well, I know this attending is cool with it, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring it. But if tomorrow I'm on with somebody else, I may hold off on it for a little bit. Because you don't wanna have it affect their reviews, their rotation, and so it's on a case-by-case. I think we have time for one more question. If
Oh, no.
and we're gonna be around
I was
as
gonna
well.
say, I know that we've talked so much about like all the extra perks about the research and like the community building and all that good stuff. But just from my own personal experience, having had a first year with 0 ultrasound, and then having my second year where I had self-supplemented, and when we were on our cardiac unit, I went and found heart failure patients in the ED and did my physical exam and then scanned them to get that immediate feedback to figure out if my physical exam was accurate, and just to help me connect the concepts that were kind of difficult as a second year. It just gave me another way of seeing the pathophysiology and wrapping my head around it. And I'm sure that I did so much better second year than first year because I had that extra tool to help me put the pieces together that were so close. And I got that last little bridged by having that extra tool.
Sorry, my last also tidbit too. I don't know if any of you guys saw the New York Times article recently about the high school athlete that died. Ultrasounds changed the way that I think as a clinician, but also just as a person, potentially a parent someday. So another student athlete died, and it was interesting because they talked all about EKGs in it, and why are students not getting EKGs as part of the screening for physicals, for their high school physicals. But not one mention was about ultrasound. And now, having come from a 4-year curriculum with ultrasound, I immediately texted Dr. Fox and I was like, why was there no mention of ultrasound in this? And how cool would it be if in like next year or like 5 years or whenever, like it was so ubiquitously used and so present in our medical education that would have already been addressed in the New York Times, and it wouldn't keep happening. So we need to get a rebuttal in the New York Times is all I'm saying. But yeah, I just think that it's so neat, and I'm so thankful for this education. I know we all are, and it's changed the way that we'll practice medicine.
Cool, thank you guys very much.